Forgo.
I'm always asked this question. Hey, you're a photographer, what camera do you recommend I buy? Well, there's two things to keep in mind. Number one is budget. How much are you willing to spend? Number two is purpose. What are you going to use this camera for? Or do you just want to take photos, or do you also want to get into videography? Today in this video, we're going to talk about some entry-level cameras that I recommend. Now, there's about 2 or 3 cameras that I recommend for both. So let's get started. The first one is Nikon D3500. This one's probably the cheapest one. It's about $429. It has a 24.2 megapixel CMOS sensor. Nikon uses F-mount, and their ISO ranges from 100 to 25,600. The max size for this camera is 6,000 by 400 pixels. And the video format is HD, and you could shoot up to 60 frames, 50 frames, 30 frames, 25, and 24 frames per second. All right, camera number 2 gets a little bit more pricier. This is a Nikon D5600. It's about $646 with 95 cents. It also has this 24.2 CMOS sensor, same mount, Nikon F-mount, full HD 1080p, and this one has a connectivity of Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and the battery life can last you about 820 shots. Now, when it comes to these two cameras, the Nikon D3500 and 5600, it's essentially the same camera. The only difference is that in the 5600, I believe you have a Bluetooth connectivity and it lasts a little bit longer. There's also a lot more, specific details, but it's in terms of the sensor, it's the same camera. Moving on to Canon. Canon, we have the Rebel T7ii. This one's about $799. It has the same type of sensor. It's a 24.2 megapixel CMOS crop sensor. Lens mount, Canon uses EF-S. It can shoot in full HD. It also has the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connectivity, and it can last you about 600 shots battery life. Next on our list, we have the Canon 90D. This one's probably one of the most expensive DSLRs on my list. It's $1,349. This one has also a crop sensor, but it's 32.5 megapixels. The ISO range is from 100 to 25,600, and I believe it's expandable to 51,200 with an upgrade. This one shoots up in 4K, and that's 4K up to 30 frames per second. So if you want to get into videography, I recommend you start getting into 4K. This also has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connectivity, and I believe the battery life can last you about 1,300 shots, so 1,300 shots. All right, so now we're going to talk about mirrorless cameras. Now, the 4 cameras I just mentioned are DSLR. So the main difference between DSLR and mirrorless is that DSLRs have a mirror inside it. When you put your eye through the viewfinder, you're seeing what the lens sees via mirror. Now, the mirrorless camera, as the name says, there's no mirror in there. So what that means is they can make smaller cameras, smaller lenses, and you take off the lens and the sensor's there. There's no mirror, right? So I'm not going to explain every detail, which is better, which I prefer, because that's a whole different video. But here are the options you have. We have the Sony A7ii. This one's about $998. It's a 24.3 full frame sensor, and it's an E-mount, and it has inside stabilization. It shoots in full HD, and it has built-in Wi-Fi connectivity. Now, the next camera is also a mirrorless camera, and this is one I recommend for videographers because it shoots in 4K. Panasonic Lumix GH5. This one's a little bit more pricey. It's probably the most expensive on the list. It's $1,897. It has a 20.3 micro four thirds sensor. It's lens mount. It's a micro four thirds, and it could shoot, like I said, 4K. It has Wi-Fi connectivity and Bluetooth, but the bad thing about this is that it can only last you 410 shots. So I would recommend more if you want to get into videography for this camera. I mentioned there's a CMOS sensor, which is a crop sensor. There's full frame cameras, and there's micro four thirds. essentially crop sensors and micro four thirds sensors. They're both cropped sensors, and if you have enough light, there's really no difference. If you have enough light and you're using the right type of lens, you can't tell the difference. But where these full frame cameras shine is in when there's low light scenarios. So when we're talking about the sensor, remember, as we talked about in the first video, the sensor is responsible for taking in light and developing the image digitally, so to speak. So the bigger the sensor, the more light it can come into the camera and a better image quality. Like I said, during the day, you won't notice a difference, but during the night, or if you're shooting in scenarios where there's not enough light, that's where those big sensors are gonna come in. So it's really up to you, your situation, your necessity. My camera, the first camera that I ever bought was a DSLR. It was a Nikon D3500, which is very similar to the first two that I mentioned, the D3500 and the Nikon D5600. In terms of the sensor, it's the same camera, but the difference between my entry-level camera and the ones I mentioned is there's a flip screen. My camera didn't come with the flip screen, so I would not recommend it for vlogging. And I have a professor, his name is Mario Congri, who's also a cinematographer and an award-winning photographer. He shoots on a Nikon D5200, which is another entry-level camera. It's a crop sensor, but what he does is, he uses old lenses, he uses modern lenses, he uses video lenses, and he gets really good results. So like I said, if you're using the right type of lens, if you have enough light, you're gonna get a really well exposed image. So it's all about, getting the best of what you can with these cameras. So there it is, guys. Those are the cameras that I recommend if you're barely starting out. If you want to get into DSLR photography, I recommend Nikon and Canon. If you want to start getting into videography, I highly recommend the Panasonic Lumix GH5, only because it shoots in 4K and it has, great stabilization. I've used this on a video project and I got really good results with it. I highly recommend these cameras because they're entry level. You can learn how to use them, and then when you want to start getting more pro, when you feel more confident and you want to take out some higher professional jobs, you can upgrade. And then you could sell your old camera, and you could use that money to partially pay for the upgrade. So that's what I recommend, guys. I really hope you like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any different recommendations, please leave them in the comments below.